They were like strange creatures I'd never seen before. They congratulated me on marrying my brother. They said my dress was nice, but then one of them suggested that hers looked better. I felt like saying that might hurt the bride's feelings. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. In the room where the bride was getting ready, I was surprised by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. They made rude comments with a sassy attitude. I couldn't believe how they talked down to me, and my sister-in-law's outfit was outrageous. Her dress was so white it could have been mistaken for a wedding dress, and it showed off her thighs through a slit. She even had fur wrapped around her off-shoulder design. My mother-in-law looked at her daughter with so much love. Meanwhile, my husband looked at them with a cold expression. I never thought I'd experience such bullying on my wedding day. It was too much to handle. Looking back, it's no wonder my sister-in-law's attempts at matchmaking never worked out, considering how she behaved even at someone else's wedding. My name is Anaya. I was born in a coastal town and grew up in a normal family. When I went to a state university, I stayed with my grandma, who lived nearby. Living with her, someone who always cared for me, was my dream. Her cozy old house blended Western and ethnic styles, giving it a nostalgic feel that I adored. Even after finding a job, I chose to stay there, enjoying moments on the balcony, chatting with grandma, and snacking on seasonal fruit. When grandma got sick, I took over caring for the house, hoping she'd recover, but sadly that wish never came true. As grandma's health declined, she moved to a facility in our hometown. I want to look after grandma, I insisted, but she smiled and told me, "You've done more than enough. I want you, Anaya, to find happiness." After grandma passed away, I married Jesse, who had always been there for me. Now we live in a house filled with memories of grandma, but our peaceful newlywed life is often disrupted by two troublesome women. How did someone like you, with such an ordinary face and slim figure, end up marrying my brother? One day, my mother-in-law asked me to make lunch for my sister-in-law, who had a meeting with the neighborhood association. Instead of thanks, my sister-in-law greeted me with sarcasm. I just wanted to leave, but if I did, they'd likely follow me home. Satisfied with her own conclusion, sister-in-law said, "Ask your brother." Well, maybe you two are a good match since he's not that great either. Then she quickly ate the curry I made. I think she believes that eating slowly in front of men makes her more attractive. My sister-in-law might seem mischievous, but what's really scary is her lack of consideration for others. She looks down on everyone, including me and her own brother, without a second thought. It's really tiring. And dealing with her mother, who raised her, is even more challenging. Instead of simply disliking me, my mother-in-law seems more focused on boosting her daughter up by putting me down and giving me orders. That's why she always asks me to do things. If I don't pay attention to her daughter, she'll either keep calling me or show up at my door nonstop. It's like a never-ending nightmare. Mother-in-law always made it clear that her daughter was her top priority and didn't seem to care much about her son, my husband. He insists he wasn't mistreated, but he also says he never felt valued. His father left for a work assignment 10 years ago and never came back, even after retiring. Despite this, he still sends money for their living expenses, so it seems neither mother-in-law nor sister-in-law care much about him. My husband tries to talk to them about their behavior, but they ignore him. To them, he's just another person to look down on. It broke my heart to see my husband suffer more than me, and I often gave in to mother-in-law's demands, which was a mistake. The two of them became increasingly difficult to bear, and as a couple, we grew exhausted. We couldn't continue like this. So determined, my husband and I decided to come up with a plan. Just when we were almost ready, mother-in-law and sister-in-law unexpectedly came to our house. It was a hot summer day, and my husband was at work. With reluctance, I greeted them. "Hello, sister-in-law. What brings you here?" Just because we're your cute sister-in-law and mother-in-law doesn't mean we need a reason to visit. You need to work on that stingy attitude. It's hot outside. Let us in. You're so thoughtless, sister-in-law snapped. I really didn't want to welcome them into Grandma's cherished house, but to avoid making a scene, I reluctantly let them in. I served them coffee and some cookies I had baked the day before. "What? No cake?" Sister-in-law complained. "I'm sorry we came unannounced." "Well, it's fine. Your cooking is all right, even if it's a bit simple," mother-in-law added. "That's true. We'll give you that," sister-in-law agreed. Strangely, their compliments felt more eerie than nice. "The house is old but roomy. It's decent," mother-in-law remarked. "To me, this house is just right," sister-in-law added. "Elle is getting married," mother-in-law suddenly dropped the bombshell. Wait, this self-centered sister-in-law. I was briefly shocked, but her getting married wasn't all that surprising. She often boasted about her shapely figure and her direct approach with men. It seemed to work on gullible men or those seeking casual relationships. So, is it with the guy you had an affair with? I remembered a man she had mentioned before. It wasn't an affair, we just met in the wrong order. It's true love, but no, not him, she brushed off. The one who recently approached you? I just noticed his intense gaze and made the first move, but no, not him either. I met him at a speed dating event. He's the son of a wealthy man, mother-in-law proudly announced. That's right, I'm having a shotgun wedding with a rich guy. Good for Elle, unlike your brother who married someone like you, she added, taking a jab at me. I'm already pregnant, she continued, driving her point home. The speed dating event was about 3 months ago. She probably charmed an unsuspecting man. I feel sorry for him and his family, mother-in-law commented. Did you end things with the other guys? I asked. Not yet. They all adore me so much, I can't bring myself to break it off. It's bound to happen eventually. Elle is just so charming. But what truly makes Elle happy is money, sister-in-law explained. I had a feeling, but I still wondered if the child was really fathered by that wealthy man. We want to use this house for a pre-wedding family gathering. Their hidden agenda became clear. I was so disgusted that I blurted out my response, absolutely not. They glared at me, and to avoid a confrontation, I quickly tried to smooth things over. I didn't want to make a scene, so I scrambled to find the right words. I think a groom's family would prefer to see their future daughter-in-law's actual home, but our place is a bit messy, and it's just a small apartment. Then tidy up and stop smoking indoors, sister-in-law snapped back. But won't it seem odd if they're invited to the bride's brother's place? I expressed my worry. You're not understanding. We'll just say this is Elle's family home. What if they find out the truth? As long as you and your husband keep quiet, it'll be fine. You're getting married, so pretending just for the introduction won't fix anything. Once we're married, he's mine, and besides, I'm pregnant, sister-in-law asserted. It's not that simple. You're so thoughtful to be concerned. But why not just make this house truly belong to mom and dad? Sister-in-law's absurd suggestions left me speechless. Oh, come on. What a terrible idea. This house belongs to my grandma. It's not just up to me, I objected. Don't you understand? Once you're married, everything belongs to the husband's family. It's a common rule, sister-in-law argued. Well, you better get used to it. What's yours is now ours. So next Sunday, we'll bring the fiance and his family over. And make sure to prepare a fancy and cute meal, of course. We'll pretend Elle made it and even change the curtains to match Elle's teeth. Mother-in-law chimed in. We're relying on you, sister-in-law, they said before leaving, imposing their wishes and convenience on me. All that was left was my boiling anger and a stack of dirty dishes. I'm sorry, we won't let them use it, my husband said that night, his heart heavy after hearing the news. Of course not, but even if we say no, they'll just force their way in. Maybe we should accelerate our plan. I could handle their mistreatment of me, but I won't stand for them disrespecting Grandma's house. We'll make them pay for all the bullying, so be prepared, I declared. The next day, I made several calls. Despite the sudden change of plans, everyone was understanding. I was truly thankful. Once everything was arranged, I called mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, I want to make sure Elle's wedding is perfect. Can we have a bit more time? We're planning to renovate to make it just right for the couple, I proposed. Anaya, I misjudged you. You're truly kind-hearted. But we need to get going with the wedding preparations, so please hurry, she replied. I understand. We'll be ready in 3 weeks. Why don't you start searching for a wedding venue? I suggested. You're very considerate. It's almost surprising. But yes, we'll leave the introduction to you and focus on the wedding, she agreed. Was this our first pleasant conversation and perhaps our last? Those two won't suspect a thing, and they won't set foot in this house until the day of the wedding. Okay, we're going to be really busy starting today, my husband said. We had a very close deadline. We would work really hard without much rest, but it was all for our future. 3 weeks later, the day my mother-in-law had set for meeting us arrived. My husband and I were nervous, waiting for her phone call. I could almost imagine my mother-in-law's angry face as she called. At 10 o'clock a.m., my phone rang, showing my mother-in-law's name. I answered the call. Anaya, what did you do? My mother-in-law's voice sounded very upset. I thought you'd like it. I made a perfect meal for you and Elle, I replied. What did you do? She asked again, her voice getting louder and more panicked. But her words were hard to understand. The place she brought her fiance's family to, pretending it was her home, wasn't Grandma's house anymore. I had prepared a new home and meal for them, but it seems they weren't happy about it. Mother-in-law's words were still hard to understand. She probably wanted me to explain everything to the other side. I'll do that. I'm sorry if I made you upset. Can you put me on speaker so the groom's mother can hear? I asked. The shouting stopped and a calm woman's voice came through. Are you Aaron's mother? It seems there's been a mix-up. Oh wait, not Aaron, sorry, she corrected herself. So Aaron finally left his wife for Elle, or is it Ivan Phil? I listed all the men my sister-in-law had been involved with. Anaya, stop it. Mother-in-law screamed, louder than before. The call ended. They were probably in the middle of a big argument. Ah, that felt satisfying. Anaya, my husband, who had listened to the whole conversation, looked at me with apology in his eyes. I'm sorry for making you do that. I should have handled it, he said, sounding regretful. No, remember I said I wanted to get back at them one last time for Grandma's beloved house. Come on, I've explained this. Grandma wanted me to be happy. I love that house, but you're more important to me than it. My mother, Grandma's heir, had planned to demolish the house, turning it into vacant land. It was earthquake resistant, but keeping up an old house is hard. I had been insisting on living there because of my love for it, but after marrying my husband and dealing with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I changed my mind. I didn't want them to ruin that house, but I didn't want to leave my husband either, so I wanted to say goodbye to Grandma's house with good memories. That's why I asked my husband to find a new job, and we prepared to move back to my hometown. We just sped up our plans. I had Grandma's house demolished and built a small dog house in the middle of the empty land with a tag that says Elle. It looked like a cozy log cabin, but it cost us a bit more than we planned. I even got some fancy dog food from the pet store. Everything was set. Grandma liked you. She wouldn't want us to break up because of that house, Anaya. I promise I won't waste the chance you've given me, my husband said, looking at me with sincerity. I trusted him when he made that decision. It's been a year and a half since then. After we moved to my hometown, my husband, who was a bit unsure at first about the fishermen in the neighborhood, has become even more popular with them than I am. He seems to really enjoy the coastal town's breeze and all the seafood dishes. His once pale skin now has some color to it. Seeing him happily eating grilled salmon for dinner makes me really happy, I told him. Did you check your emails today? My husband asked. No, nothing new. They're probably busy. We haven't talked to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law since that whole thing happened. My husband's phone is the only way we could reach them, I said. We found out about the doghouse situation from a neighbor who was friends with Grandma. The house my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed Grandma was torn down, and now there's just a doghouse there. And from the dog food bowl, there's a fancy smell of perfume, I added. The two were really upset, saying it was all because of my brother's wife. When the fiance's family got a hint over the phone about my sister-in-law's bad taste in men, they confronted them. They got really nervous and couldn't give a clear answer. Later, the fiance's parents hired a detective to check on my sister-in-law's behavior, but they found nothing except lies and a lot of boyfriends. This made them do a DNA test on the unborn baby, and they found out it wasn't the rich man's. So the engagement was called off. The real father of the baby turned out to be one of the men my sister-in-law was seeing. He was happy to have a child with her, and they got married. But his mom was angry that her son was with an older woman she didn't like, so she insisted they all live together. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was mad that her daughter was taken away, so she rented an apartment near the newlyweds and they fought a lot. My sister-in-law, who wanted to marry rich and have an easy life, now looks tired from dealing with her mother-in-law and doing housework and taking care of the baby. But the good part is, her husband really loves the baby, so they're managing on their own. My husband's phone rings. Oh, it's an invitation for drinks from my father-in-law. Your dad really likes you, I mentioned. I like hearing his stories, and my mother-in-law always makes my favorite food. I see now that my own mom never cared to know what I liked. This is what having a family feels like, my husband whispered. Don't worry. You'll be the kind of parent who knows all their child's favorites, I comforted him. As I said this, I gently rubbed my growing belly and he smiled warmly. I feel like we can make that happen in this house, he said, looking at the caramel-colored beam on the ceiling. It's a special beam we kept from Grandma's house when we tore it down. We put it in our new home as a reminder of Grandma. It was my husband's idea to keep the beam, even when I wanted to start fresh. That's why I chose to build our future with him. Let's make this house just as wonderful as Grandma's, I declared. Yes, definitely, my husband agreed. In this peaceful coastal town where you can hear the waves, our little house stands. This is where we'll create our happiness.